Hello, and welcome to the Cultural Capacity Podcast. My name is Kara Gonzalez-Howard, and I'm going to be talking to you this morning a little bit about effective communication and how that can make or break your workplace wellness experience overall. I like to come on here and talk about workplace wellness about once a month, so you can catch some of my previous episodes. But today I want to talk about my experience in healthcare with effective communication. So I recall in my almost 2 decades of nursing, every year or 2 years or so, they sent out an employee engagement survey. This happened at both large organizations that I worked for. And typically, what would happen is they would come back and say, this, and this need to be fixed. And what it all boiled down to in the end was effective communication or lack thereof. Now, in my opinion, in that field specifically in healthcare, effective communication is a do or die situation, right? So if you have a doctor that's relaying orders to a nurse and they're not effectively communicating to each other, that's not going to work out well for the patient in the end. That being said, effective communication can not only affect, health outcomes in the healthcare industry, but it can also affect the way that we interact with other people at work. So, workplace wellness is kind of a vague term, something that probably wasn't thought of much until the last 5 to 10 years, I would say. In my working experience, that's kind of been the cadence of when things started, ramping up and the awareness was kind of being built because people realized that people were coming to work and kind of just going through the routines grudgingly often. That became kind of a sour spot uh, to a corporation or an organization. If you have a bunch of people showing up to work who don't actually want to be there and aren't excited for the work that they're doing, that becomes an issue. So, how do we build effective communication in the workplace in order to achieve this kind of epiphany or epitome is the word I meant, epitome of workplace wellness? So in my opinion, and in my own work, in my own journey, I think a lot of it starts with us, and we talk about this a lot on the Educator Aid YouTube channel, and a lot of our education and our services are geared around effective communication and how to achieve that. We have resources such as the process communication model, which is basically explores your personality condominium and kind of finds out what your base level of operating in and out of distress is throughout your lifetime. You go through several different phases usually. So we offer analysis and in-depth analysis and coaching services for PCM or the process communication model. We also have a Culture Pulse tool that we use routinely with clients to measure year-over-year feedback and growth. Additionally, we have other things actually coming out this year. We're going to be launching a program called Origin, and this is going to be focusing on getting to know you, which, back to my point, in my experience, this is the most fundamental thing that we can do to build effective communication on our end. We're not responsible for the communication of others, right? Unless you're a manager or a leader in an organization, which some of you are, your primary responsibility when you go to work typically is not leading others through learning about their own communication styles, right? As a leader, this should be an area of emphasis for yourself and your coworkers that you're leading. However, we each have a duty and responsibility in our lifetime as we go through our career to kind of be building on the knowledge of ourselves so that we can more deeply know how to interact with others. If I don't understand personally what causes me distress throughout my day, little moments here and there of tension, This can be from other people. This can be from circumstances that occur throughout my day, just general life stressors. We all go through the seasons of distress throughout our day. In our lifetime, this is a daily thing that we should just expect. But in order to mitigate the effects of this on ourselves and our own wellness and emotional well-being, as well as our capacity to pour into others, communicate effectively with others. I don't know about you, but when I am in distress, it's really difficult for me to communicate to others in an effective manner. I might come across as frustrated. Maybe I'm not frustrated with you. Maybe I'm frustrated with the thing that just happened over here that you don't even know about, but you feel like I'm frustrated with you because I'm dealing with this sense of frustration from a situation that just came up, right? Just as a typical everyday example. So we have a duty and responsibility as professionals to kind of daily explore, how are we getting to know ourselves? What do I need to do personally to become a more effective communicator? How do I make sure that I'm communicating in a way that other people can receive it, right? There's this old adage out there, and I can't remember, I believe it's part of PCM, but it's also very common knowledge that communication can only occur when it's occurring on both ends, right? So if you hear what I have to say in the way that I mean it, and I'm able to communicate to you in a way that's not watered down and is actually what I'm trying to say. Usually people do not receive communication when there's stress involved. So you want to make sure that you're, especially in tough situations or tough conversations, you're waiting until the person, first of all, has given you consent to address them as far as like what you have to say. And you also want to make sure that they are in a good place, like emotionally, to receive the information. They haven't had like the day from hell and they're not able to understand or process what you're saying because they've got all this noise in their head, from whatever has been going on in their day. Usually as a leader in prior positions, and even now when I'm dealing, with coworkers and clients and things like that, it's important that I make sure that the communication is occurring not only when I'm good for it, right? I'm in the right state of mind to deliver the communication and also receive communication back from a person on the communication I'm delivering, but that they have consented to a specific time that is good for them to communicate with me, right? We don't ever want to be an inconvenience for somebody. I know my husband also often tells me, he works in a manufacturing business, right? And he often tells me, he said yesterday he gets 400 emails a day and he's in this constant state of like receiving all this information. Well, probably at the end of the day, after receiving communication all day in various forms that maybe aren't the most personable, email and text and that sort of thing aren't the most personable ways that we can communicate with one another, he's probably not going to want to have a super in-depth conversation about something that happened in his day and perhaps sleeping on it and then going in the next morning examining with the person that he's addressing, like, okay, this happened yesterday. I like to sit down, preparing the person. I'd like to sit down with you at some point today and talk about that. When would be a good time for you? That allows you to get your mind right around whatever subject matter you're discussing. And it also allows the other person who's receiving that communication to prepare themselves with the upcoming conversation. There are a lot of people that need a lot of time for processing in a lot of different situations, and that's 100% okay. I'm often one of those people. I don't like to just spout off the cuff about things because oftentimes that gets me in trouble. Anyways, so that's all for today. Just really remembering that effective communication and workplace wellness go hand in hand, right? So if you feel like you're in a toxic, fraught environment, that there's a lack of communication, you don't exactly know what's going on in a very clear fashion, and the way in which coworkers communicate with one another can also be kind of toxic and off the cuff and kind of harsh, that's not going to make for a good workplace environment for the person delivering communication and the person receiving communication in any capacity. So I hope that you got some value out of this conversation today. Just remember, communication doesn't really have a timeline typically. There are some situations, like I will say in healthcare specifically, there are situations where communication has a timeline and it needs to be delivered in a very concise and effective manner, right? Other than that, communication can wait at times until both parties are in the right frame of mind to give and receive that communication. I hope that you are able to contribute this to your workplace wellness kind of bank that you've got going on up here to try to make your career path and the career path of your fellow coworkers more pleasurable. I know work and pleasure aren't typically talked about in the same sentence, but in my experience, if you love what you do, they say you'll never work a day in your life. And I think that's true. So have a wonderful holiday, and we'll see you back after Christmas. Bye-bye.